Hatep Yasar. Welcome to another doctrine class with Pa Mersa'u, Anuki Mersotat, Nisutat, Nedawa, Naportat Atumreye.
Anuki Mersal Nasut, Pata, Kafreye, Hepetreye, Atumreye. And we are honored and blessed to be student teachers of the Master Teacher for this day and time to bring you Wu Nuwapu for the Nuwapians.
We would first like to give reverence and gratitude to Pa Manzal Nazdar Amun Nabab Re'e Akakbata Zetwi, Hu Kawan Harar, for without him, none of this would have been possible. So we are ever grateful and we are ever humble for him, for his ancestors, for giving us this doctrine, because this is truly, truly a divine blessing for us, and we can never forget that.
The emblem of the helpers. Pa Muhaddi, the guider. The devil is very upset now because back in June of 1993, when he pretended to ignore our retained sovereignty. Yes, we retained our sovereignty, our sovereign status as an indigenous tribe of Native Americans. We, the people, we felt and he felt that it was over, but we knew better. Or, as they put it, it was safe to go back into the water. And now it's back, right in their face, with paper trail to back it all up. They can try and run, but they will not be able to hide. For now, we, the United Nuwapian Nation, number 215, 1993, we are ready to fight the good fight of Ma'at, and we will win. It's not just about my freedom. Pa Manzal said it's not just about his freedom. It's our whole nation, our tribe. It's about that freedom as well. This is what the Honorable Marcus Garvey, Noble Drew Ali, Honorable Elijah Muhammad, this is what each of them spoke about in this day, in this time, for this day, and for this time. As we read this in Genesis, the 15th chapter, verse 13 through 16.
And he said unto Abram, know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them, and they shall afflict them for 400 years. And also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge, and afterward shall they come out with great substance. And thou shalt go thy fathers in peace. Thou shalt be buried in a good old age. But in the 4th generation they shall come hither again, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full.
We come from under the Amorite. Canaanites are not from Egyptians. Amorites are not Egyptians. So this 400 years was from 1600 plus 400, which gives you 2,000 years. And look at us now. And look at us now. Do we know who we are?
Yes.
Do we know what we are?
Tua.
Yes. Tua. Twa. Do we speak our own language? Tua. Yes. Same as we did in Genesis, the 11th chapter, verse 1 through 7.
And the whole earth was of one language and of one speech. And it came to pass, as they journeyed from the east, that they found in a plain in the land of Shinar, and they dwelt there. And they said one to another, Go to, let us make brick and burn them thoroughly. And they had brick for stone, and slime had they for mortar. And they said, Go to, let us build us a city and a tower, whose top may reach unto heaven, and let us make us a name, lest we be scattered abroad upon the face of the whole earth. And the Lord came down to see the city and the tower, which the children of men build. And the Lord said, Behold, the people is one, and they have all one language. And this they begin to do. And now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do. Go to, let us go down, and there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. Going back to Genesis chapter 11, verses 1 through 7, I just read what the King James Version of the Bible has in quotes. Now I'm going to give you the real doctrine on it. Verse 1, where it says, And the whole earth was of one language and of one speech. It was not the whole earth. It was one land in Mesopotamia. They were all under one language, one tone, one frequency, one vibration. They journeyed, being Cush and Nimrod, journeyed from Ethiopia, Africa. They journeyed to Mesopotamia. And there is where they built the tower. But it wasn't all in the tower. They built this tower, the people there. They all spoke Nuwapic, Napatan, Nabatian, Nephtuhim. They spoke this language, and they all was in unison. Cush taught his son Nimrod. Cush and Nimrod taught the people this language. And the reason they taught the people this language was so that they would not be up under the spell. You see, there were two groups of Anunnaki. You had the Inkyites and you had the Enloites.
As we all know, when we speak of the Anunnaki, we speak of them coming to the planet Earth. Tatum are referred to as Ta, in groups of 50s, as they came sent from their father Anu, who we know as Aliyun El. You can find in Genesis the 14th chapter, verse 18 through 22. This is all Mesopotamian, or as they refer to, Sumerian doctrine. It is where they found the Sumerian cuneiform tablets, of which today the three religions, Mosesism, Jesusism, Mohammedism, the three isms, take from, because they fall up under these flesh-eating beings that came to the planet thousands upon millions years ago. Yes, they were the sons of Enki and the sons of Enlil. Enki, as we know, as my Hamutet said, in the King James Version of the Bible, you hear him up under the tones of Yahweh or Jah. You also hear Enlil under the tones of Baal Gad, El Shaddai, Shad, demon. Well, Enki, he did his breeding in Africa. He had a son named Marduk, who was also referred to as Yahuwah or Jah. In later times, he became known as Adonai or Adonijah, as you find the name translated in other scriptures. They were of the Dengar, as we say, the seraphim, as we move through the schools given to us by the master teacher. Now let's look at the other brother. His name was Enlil, also known as Baal Gad. You find in Joshua the 11th chapter, verse 17. He did his breeding or mixing in Mesopotamia. He had a son. His name is Nanar. He was referred to as El Shaddai, El Shad, Zin, Zuin, Satan. He's also, or this group were referred to as the Agigi, or the cherubim. So you have these two groups that came to the planet Earth for their own reasons, as we find in Patarak, as we find in the actual facts given to us by the master teacher. All of them were referred to as angelic beings or angels. In tones, they were referred to as Malak, Molak, Melek, Melkan. We call them angels, or as they say, Gaborim, mighty men, demi-deities, demagogues.
Anu also had a daughter, and her name was Ninhursag. Ninhursag and Enlil bred together, or mated together, and they birthed Ninurta. In verse 3 of Genesis chapter 11, it says, "And they said one to another, 'Go to, let us make brick and burn them thoroughly.' And they had brick for stone, and slime they had for mortar." This is what Nimrod said to the people when they began building their tower. They all spoke one language, they were under one frequency, they were on the same station. They made this tower, and they did not ask their overlords or their gods for permission. They did not need to. They conversed with one another because they were on the same frequency. This tower that they built had a radio antenna on it, and they used that tower to communicate with Enki, Marduk, and Marduk's son Nabu. The Enlilites, who would be Enlil, Ninurta, and Nanar, they could not get on the same radio station as these Enkyites because they were speaking Nuwapic. Enlil, Ninurta, and Nanar were upset. They wanted to cast the spell of tone on the people. But because Cush and Nimrod taught the people Nuwapic, they could not do that. And the way that they did that was getting into their heads. That is how they spoke to them, through their heads. And it was a certain frequency, a certain tone. But because they knew Nuwapic, they could not get into their heads because they were not on their station. So henceforth, they were cut off from Enlil, Nanar, and Ninurta. Do you understand? So that just goes to show how great our language is. Okay, verse 7 where it says, "Go to, let us go down, and therefore confound their language. They may not understand one another's speech." That they may not understand one another's speech. Enlil, Ninurta, and Nanar, they came down because they wanted to know what was going on, why the people were doing great things, making great structures. Y'all know Nimrod built great structures. Those great structures were landing strips or landing places for the Nephilim. So they wanted to know why these people were no longer under their spell, was not doing what they wanted to do. So that's why they came down to confound the tongues. And they scattered the people abroad Mesopotamia, not the whole planet. So in actuality, it had nothing to do with the tower. It had nothing to do with the tower. It was all about confounding the language. It was about the Nuwapic, because they spoke Nuwapic back then. Okay, so once again, Enlil, Nanar, and Ninurta did not want their Lulu Amalu, their slaves, their human slaves, to speak the tongue of Cush's son Nimrod. Nimrod was of a mixed seed. His father was pure African, and his mother, she was an Enlilite. She was a Canaanite. So he took the nature of his mother, which that shows why he was so mighty, why he was so strong, because they have a very six ether type nature. So he took more of his mother nature than he did his father's nature.
So all this was about language, not about a tower, not about building, a structure. They, being Enlil, Nanar, and the Urta, did not want their human slaves, referred to as the Lulu Amalu, to speak the tones or the tongues of Cush, Cush being from Africa, being the original tones and the original language. They didn't want this tongue of Cush's son called Nimrod. Didn't want this to be spoken. Why? Because he came from a mixed seed. From a mixed birth, Cush moved out of Nepata or Nepatan to Mesopotamia, to the place where it was all messed up, where it was Mesopotamia. It was a mixing pot, a landing site for all type of beings to come. We refer to that in some of the older schools as the land of Nod, or the Nodites, the Anakim. He went there and he took a wife of these Enlilites. And so Nimrod was born a Gaborim, a mighty man, one strong with his deeds and actions. We read that in Genesis, the 10th chapter, verse 18. And the Avidite, and the Zamorite, and the Hamathite, and afterward were the families of the Canaanites, where they spread abroad. You find it in Hebrews, under Hebrews, Strong's, number 1368, as Gabor, strong and mighty. So he was born part deity, strong and mighty, part demon, strong and mighty, demagogue, deity. One from a Canaanite, demon. One from a deity, or Nagaru, Negroid seed, deity, mixed seed. He's referred to as Gabriel, a deity. And he spoke Nepatan, or Nephtuhim, that is Nuwapuyi. And we find that in Genesis, the 10th chapter, verse 13. And Mesrim begot Ludim, and Anamim, and Libim, and Nephtuhim. And also we find it in 1 Chronicles, the 1st chapter, the 11th verse. And it states again, and Mesrim begot Ludim, and Anamim, and Lahabim, and Nephtuhim. You see it again in verse 10. And Cush begot Nimrod. He began to be mighty upon the earth. And Cush, which is also Ethiopia, begot Nimrod. So you find Cush, you find Mesrim, you find all of these Hebraic names and tones trying to hide the true fact that it was his father out of Africa, from our fatherland, that Nuwapi came. He began to be a Gabor, mighty upon the earth. Now next, you see the link in the 11th verse. And Egypt, which is Egypt, and Ludim, and Anamim, and Lahabim, and the key word, Nephtuhim, which is Nuwapians. So this Nimrod was mixed, and he spoke pure Nuwapi, Nepatan, and that was in tone in which he spoke pure Nuwapi. So they would not be able to speak inside of his head with a spell. If they spoke on their own wavelength or own frequency, they would not be able to get inside of their head, as we Nuwapians should do, as Nuwapic does to us when we speak our own language. And Enlil and his two sons, Nanar, and the Urta. They came down because the people of Nimrod started to rename themselves.
As you see in Genesis chapter 11, verse 4. Let us make us our own name, rename ourselves, drop the Semitic names that link them to the specter of six ether, drop the Arabic, Hebrew, English, Spanish, Swahili, Yoruba, Akkadian, Moorish, Persian, and Indian names. Rename, retune your frequencies to your own ancestors, not the familiar spirits, not their familiar spirits.
It said R-E name, Ray name, Reye name. Take a name, a tone of your ancestors from the land of Afaf, Reya, Reye, Ray, Afreyaka, of your ka, of your spirit, of your soul. He had to relink with his fatherland, with his motherland, so he could retune, attune, female energy, those frequencies to your ancestors. The only problem was she was a Canaanite, not our mother, female, familiar, family spirits. So we read again in Leviticus, the 20th chapter, verse 1 through 6. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, Again thou saith to the children of Israel, whomsoever he be of the children of Israel, or the strangers that sojourn in Israel, that giveth any of his seed unto Moloch, he shall surely be put to death. The people of the land shall stone him with stones. And I will set my face against that man, and will cut him off from among the people, because he hath given of his seed unto Moloch, to defile my sanctuary, and to profane my holy name. And the people of the land do in any ways hide their eyes from the man, when he giveth of his seed unto Moloch, and kill him not. Then I will set my face against that man, and against his family, and will cut him off, and all that go a whoring after him, to commit whoredom with Moloch, from among their people. And the soul that turneth after such as having familiar spirits, and after wizards, to go a whoring after them, I will even set my face against that soul, and cut him off from amongst the people. So as you see, Nimrod left his fatherland, his motherland, Mother Earth, and he went a whoring into Mesopotamia. And he took a wife of these beings that they refer to as the Anunnaki, or the Canaanites, Amorites, mixed seeds.
Just to go back a bit, where Baba says for us to drop the Arabic, the Hebrew, the Spanish, the Swahili, Moorish, and all of those names, he's telling us to drop those names because in those names are their tones, are their frequencies. And when we do their rituals from the three religions, Mosesism, Jesusism, Abrahamism, and we do those chants, we call on those six ether forces. We make those specters and those ghosts real. The word, say for example, I say the name John. Well, John, all the Johns in the world just looked at me. They incarnated physically. You may not see them, but they incarnated physically. That is what Baba is saying. When you do their prayers, when you do their rituals and their chantings, be it of whatever religion, whatever culture, This is what you do. You make that word become physical. That word that you just said, that chanted, or whatever you meditated on, you made it become physical. So Baba is saying stop that, because you become a physical and a mental slave to those forces. You open yourself up. You open yourself up to let that sin in. You know how I say the sin lieth at the door? Well, once you open that door, there he goes. And we don't realize how we open that door often, more often than we would like. Just from simple thoughts, simple tones that we put out. That's why Baba is saying it's very important for us to learn our language thoroughly. Because at the end of the day, our language is all we have to free us, to get us back to being that mighty people. We once had our own land. We once built our own structures. We once were all in tune, on the same frequency, on the same radio station. We once were not on their frequency, so we could not be infiltrated. But now many of us are. People still hear voices. Some voices tell them to kill themselves, kill other people. That's because we're not in tune and we're not on the same frequency. So Baba is telling us to please learn Nuwapic fluently. Learn it, be it, live it, apply it. Because that is what the world needs. It's a song. If you really look at the doctor language, when you speak it in tones to the best of your ability, because we know Baba has to give us our true tone. When you speak it in tone to the best of your ability, you're singing. It's a beautiful song. It really is. So we really got to take that time and get back to that. Baba is showing us how back in those days they did that. Nimrod, who was of a mixed seed, he was part African, part Canaanite, but he did that because he knew his ancestors, the Enlilites, he knew what they were about. He didn't want his people to be any part of that. He protected them. We don't realize that Nuwapic is a protection on every level. But you have to open yourself up to this doctrine. And Baba wrote in this very same letter that he wrote, he said, the way of a Nuwapian is divine love. You open yourself through divine love, and this doctrine flows in. The ego, it balances out. The pride, it balances out. But you gotta have some. The jealousy should be none.
As my wife was whispering to me, I was saying they can hear everything we saying up here, because that's the power of tone. Oh, she got one more thing.
Sorry. Just look at my notes so I can remember. Baba was saying also that the music affects your tone. He was talking about in the churches, how they say they got the Holy Ghost, how the preacher will be up, he'll be speaking in tongues and doing all of this.
In the name of Jesus, you be made whole by the power of God.
And those same energies, specters, ghosts, dead forces that's working through him affects his congregation. So now the congregation is speaking in tones, and they got the amen corner going on, and they running up and down because they're being controlled by 60 the forces. So you have to be careful. Those forces can control you, just like, say, for example, they came into me, and I'm talking to you all. Well, you all could be affected. That's just an example. Just an example.
So it's family or familiar spirits who inspired their prophets to lie. The Torah, the gospel, the Quran, it lies. But what and who? The dead spirits they raise. By what and by who do these dead spirits raise? Do these dead spirits raise us? if we call on their tones and do their rituals and not know what we say. Yes, these dead familiar spirits who have tied into our vein, tied into our blood, we vibrate on their frequency. As Mahamutet said, we give them life. We give them a shell, a soul, a body, a ka, a ba, a khat, to incarnate, to come into, to use. Their Elohim come up out of the earth as ghost specters, called up in tones, names. An evil spirit, as you find in 1 Samuel, the 19th chapter, the 19th verse. An evil spirit from the Lord in the 18th chapter and the 10th verse. You also find it in the 16th chapter and the 14th verse. This is all found in 1 Samuel. Also in 1 Samuel, Sam, son of Sam. You find it in the 28th chapter, the 23rd verse. This is the seed of Ibrahim, called on the evil. It is his seed that called on the evil Elohim, the evil Allah. So verses that you can find in the Holy Bible. You can go to Deuteronomy, the 32nd chapter, the 17th verse. They don't do it today the same as they did it back then, which you find in Genesis, the 4th chapter, the 7th verse. They fix it up, as Mahamutet said, and you find them with tamarines and different frequencies, different clothes, all to call on those same tones and perform those same rituals, just in a different suit, a different guise, a different illusion. Also, you can find in Revelations, the 3rd chapter, the 20th verse, and it says, "Behold, I stand at the door and knock. If any man hear my voice and open the door, I will come into him and will sup with him and he with me." Which means that if you don't learn the proper tones and the right frequencies, you could swear you're doing the right thing, that you're fighting the good fight, the right fight, but you just open up a door for those beings, or we say these beings, to come in and control your thoughts in your mind, in your head, on those frequencies that you've opened up for them to hover over you for so many seconds, as we know 3, and come into your being and do their work, or as they say, do their will. The same being at that door or that gateway or that vortex to you is that gateway that Sin or Suin, Su as in pig, Suin, Nanar, son of God, Enlil, who art in heaven. That's the same one in Revelations, the 22nd chapter, the 16th verse. That's the same bloodline, the same frequency that can hover and come into you. And as we know in our updates from our great elders, Nanar, the son of Enlil, Nanar, the bright one, the shining one, the white one, he's come to earth. So he's come for a reason. So we have to protect ourselves by being on the same frequency. So you find him upon the brightness, the bright one. It says in Corinthians, the 2nd chapter, the 11th verse, verse 14, "And no marvel, for Satan himself is transformed into an angel of light." So don't marvel about it. It's just that simple. Light fire, bright one, white one. So you see, son, it's all about tones. The door is your heart. And many of us know as brothers where we were first prepared. And if you let them, these frequencies get to your heart, if it gets to your family, what destruction can they do to the family? We'll destroy ourselves. You open it up to them and they enter and take over your mind. It starts with the name, Just like we call his name, we call her name. And we don't speak divine love. We speak other tones, other frequencies about that name and open it up for sin, Zuin. Remember, we read in Patarak that sin is not what you do. Zuin, sin, this being, this tone, this name, this adjective, this frequency is not what you do. It's what you think. It's your thought. All they need is for you to vibrate off of divine love. Wunuwap. That's all they need. And they can change your whole vibration and destroy everything that we are building to free our master teacher. This is why Muslims say in the name of God, Jesus, they say here, or Sham, which is a name, Shema Israel. Sham is here. And name, you see this in Genesis the 11th chapter, the 4th verse. It's also found as heaven, Sham, Hashemayim, up there, heaven or sky. The root word is Sham. So maybe someone's been running a sham on us. Now let's go back to Adam.
Genesis chapter 2, verse 20. Names. And Adam gave names to all cattle, and to the fowl of the air, and to every beast of the field. But for Adam there was not found a helpmeet for him. So Nimrod broke that. He came and taught them a new tonguage, new names, and the Anunnaki knew that would break the spell. Now reread it with a free mind, and you will see. And what did the Anunnaki of Enlil do? It's in Genesis chapter 11, verses 6 through 7. And the Lord said, behold, the people is one, and they have all one language, and this they began to do. And now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do. Go to, let us go down, and there confound their language, that they may not understand one another's speech. It was all about speech. So what did they do? Genesis chapter 11, verses 8 through 9. So the Lord scattered them abroad from thence upon the face of all the earth, and they left off to build the city. Therefore is the name of it called Babel, because the Lord did go there, confound the language of all the earth, and from thence did the Lord scatter them abroad upon the face of all the earth. So therefore is the name confusion, Babel, by what? Confounding the language. Nothing to do with destroying a tower, another of their prophets' lies. So we must break his spell again. Hope this is clear. Let my words be known to all. Feed my people if you love me. Feed my people. Son, I know I talk too much, so I will close for now. Hope to read from you soon. Give your family my love. Tell them Pops did not forgive them. Pops Yanun. He also says, look at all them that speak Semitic language, Semitic tonguage, fighting and killing each other world over. Ibrahim, who was Ibrahim, seed, killing in the name of God. I gotta make this one point. Baba also said that most people think that Nuwapic come from Semitic languages. He says actually the other way around. Just to make that clear, Semitic languages come from Nuwapic.
Speaking on that, as it said before, it said Sham, Shim. It actually meant up there in the heavens, where these beings came that spoke this tone and spoke this language. Because as you know, the language was given to us Nagaru, 54,000 years ago, where we spoke the language of our ancestors. Only 69,000 years ago that it was given to these animals who didn't even speak tones. They grunted and made sounds. So they were speaking about up there and Sham, up there where the crafts were, where these beings came that spoke this divine language or this divine music.
He also says, my son, all Nuwapians need to read this book, The Rise and Fall of the Nephilim, by Scott Allen Roberts. He makes some mistakes, but a lot he says is true. Also, as I told you, we used to live underwater first. It was on TV, the Discovery Channel. Look it up. Mermaids, the body found, not from land to sea, but from sea to land, or sky to sea to land. Pops.
As you read in their Torah, Nimrod built a radio tower to speak with one of the extraterrestrials of the Anunnaki, the Anakim. He was Enki, and his brother, who was Enlil, did not like that, which you find in Genesis, the 11th chapter, verse 1 through 9. So he blocked the signal of speech. Later in Exodus, Moses was told by Enlil how to build a radio to speak with him in Exodus, the 25th chapter, verse 10 through 22. They learned this from the Egyptians. The radio inside the head is what they learned from the Egyptians. They could not do this. They could not do this. So they built one on the outside of the body, and they called it the Ark of the Covenant, which you can find in Strong's number 727 under the word Arun, which means box, and also in Strong's number 717, Arah, which means pluck or gather. So in order to speak with and hear their God El Shaddai, they built a radio. Today, each of the Jews, they wear two small black boxes on their head with El Shaddin or Al Shaddid written inside, in hopes that they may receive a voice from above, a voice from Shama Israel, a voice from up there.
So we have a doctrine update from this past weekend's visit. Baba once learned from a master and asked him, how is water shaped? He thought he had the master stumped because the master always had the answer to all questions asked. The master replied, pointing, and told him to go to the sea and meditate on that. He stayed out there all day, staring at the sea. Finally, when the sun started to go down, the moonlight started to shimmer on the waves of the sea. It was then revealed to him that water is pointy by watching the natural movement of the water. Look at you, laughing. This is Baba was laughing. Now you want to know the shape of the wind? If you tell a secret, then it's not a secret. You can tell by the features of a person what race or salau is in them. For instance, the jawbone of the cockazoo. If you set it down on a table and go straight across like a dog, it goes straight across like a dog. The Mangao, Asian, jawbone is rounded, so if you set it down, it would rock. The Nagaru, Negroid's jawbone, has a slight curve. The Nagaru has a curve in the back of their heads, whereas the Magau, Asians, head is flat. On the Nagaru, the ankle to the heel curves out, whereas the Caucasus ankle to the heel is flat. This is what Hitler was doing while in contact with the Pleiadians. Hitler wasn't doing a race Salau massacre. He and his army were looking for features, And if they didn't have the Nordic features, then they were killed. Movies mean moving pictures. So if you saw a picture on the side of a bus and the bus drove off, would you call that a movie? No. What the movie theaters show are not called movies. They are called cinemas. There are 3 truths. One truth, for example, when someone comes in a room and says somebody left their car lights on, a truth that is not proven yet. The second truth would be everyone going to the window to see that someone's lights are in fact on. A truth that is being confirmed. The third truth is when you recognize that yes, your lights are in fact on. A truth that is confirmed. The Caucasus male are really starting to go for women outside of their race. From areas of northern Africa, like Morocco, Sudan, etc. They like their look. Mangal-u, Asian, men mostly stay in their own race. Somebody actually slept with Julia Childs. Everybody is returning back to their culture. That was funny. Look how many people were held back from the Olympics because of Islam. Women for years could not compete or represent their country and left and were held back because of the religion. Baba says peddling can be very lucrative if you have a good product. If someone tells you that you worship more than one God, you tell them, yeah, we can afford more than one statue. That's funny. One of the Jesus of their Bible defined love when he told Simon Peter to feed my flock in John chapter 21, verses 15 through 17. Part of our culture, when you go to stay at a person's house, you bring them gifts. King just means kindred, and the Spanish calls King Rey. That's who they unknowingly worshipped, Rey. Under the Queen's throne in England is the cornerstone that the government is looking in the White House for. The cornerstone is hollow, and inside the cornerstone is the complete blueprint for Washington, D.C. that was given to George Washington by the Pleiadians he was in contact with. Have you ever wondered why the obelisk in D.C. is pointing toward Pleiades star constellation? It's because the Washington Monument is their radio frequency tower to stay in contact with the Pleiadians. That is why we did our ceremony around the Washington Monument to change their frequency to ours. To connect with Pa Natharu. This is the same type of wave frequency that Nimrod and the children of Adamites, Sethites, and Enosites were building to be in contact with his father's ancestors, the seed of Enki. Refer to Genesis chapter 11, verses 1 through 9. Nimrod, son of Cush, was a Gabor, a demi-deity, part Anunnaki, because of his mom's lineage. Cush moved out of Africa and crossed over to Mesopotamia and took a Nephilim wife of Canaan, Cain, an evil seed, which made Nimrod a demigod. Nimrod, or Nimrod, rebelled from the Wiccan white magic of his Anunnaki mother's lineage and spoke pure Nepotan, Naphtuhim, Nuwapik, of his father and his uncle, Mizraim's Egypt's seed. Genesis chapter 10, verse 6, Genesis chapter 10, verse 13. And taught the people, the Adamites, the Sethites, and Enosites, the pure language. He united all, speaking one tongue. And they cried out, "Let us make names for ourselves." So they gave themselves Nuwapic names, and not the names of the Semitic tongue. This angered the deity Baal, Gad, or Enlil, master of above, master or lord of the sky, because they could no longer control their minds by tones and frequencies anymore. So it wasn't just about a tower like their Bible tells. It was the pure language, Nuwapik, Nepatan, Naphtuhim, that was breaking the Anunnaki spell. Nanar, Sin, Zuin, Al Shaddai, son of Enlil, was the first to come down to see what the Abd slaves were up to. He heard the pure tones they were using, and he saw what they were building, and returned to Nibiru to warn his father of the rebellion of their own seed, Nimrod, and the Adamite, Sethite, and Enosite slaves. So Enlil, his son, Nanar, and his other son, Ninurta, said, "Let us three go back down to Kawak Taha, planet Earth." Genesis chapter 11, verse 7. To confuse and put our Wiccan, Wakan, curse on them. A spell of Babel, confusion. After they cursed the people Nimrod was raising, they began to separate and scatter abroad. Genesis chapter 11, verse 8. Hence the name Babel, Bab-El, Babylon, doorway or gateway to Enlil, Ilu, El, Elohim, Illa, Allah, or Alihat, because Enlil confounded the pure language of Taha, earth. Genesis chapter 11, verse 9. If you see a relation between Nimrod's people and us, good. Pop says that is what he is doing right now with Nuwapik, breaking their spell. The devil needs you to speak their tongue to keep their spell of white magic. That is why they ask, what does Nuwapik or Wu Nuwap mean? They need to put a meaning to it in their tongue, like they do all others. So let's break the spell of Lawi Tananu Leviathan. Our language, Kayor, changes and grows. Keep up and tune into your own frequencies. Nuwapu at nuwapik.com. The Pleiadians were also in contact with Joseph Smith, founder of the Mormon religion, and they gave to him the whole doctrine about us, which is why they tried to defame Nagaru in their teachings, and now lying to save face by stating that was in their original teachings and not a part of modern Mormonism. Pop says that Obama supports the sovereign rights of the indigenous people. So please register to vote. If you have not voted recently, re-register because you may not be in the system. You need to do it before it's too late. And everyone who considered themselves to be a Nuwapian, vote for President Obama. Mitt Romney, the same as Moroni, a Pleiadian angel. Sephardim, Jews, are Spaniards. Once again, all Nuwapians, please read The Rise and Fall of Nephilim by Scott Allen Roberts. I have the ISBN number. Do anybody need the ISBN number? Please say no. You want the ISBN number? You ready? is 13:1-601-63-197-8. Also, please read Gateway of the Gods by Craig Hines. That's Gateway of the Gods by Craig Hines. Ready for that, Isbin? 13:978-097-855-9106. Also, please read The Legacy of Arab Islam in Africa by John Alambilla Azuma. That's The Legacy of Arab Islam in Africa by John Alambilla. That's ALEMBILLAH Azuma, AZUMAH. You ready for the ISBN? 978-1-851. Excuse me, I'm sorry about that. It's 978-1-851-68-273-7. Once again, Pamanzal told us that we used to live underwater first, and we came from the sky to the sea to the land. So we came from the sky to the sea to the land. He said, look up on the Discovery Channel or online, Mermaids, the Body Found. Any rereads?
We would like to thank the family for coming out tonight, because we know it's not about a building, a tower. It's about frequencies. It's about tone. It's about not letting them get into your head and to your heart. Nothing but our ancestors by way of Pamanzal. Wadawu.